have a nonprofit called Beats Overdose. We pass out naloxone, fentanyl test strips. Because, back in my day, you kind of had to consent to taking a certain amount of risk with drug use. And now there is non-consensual fentanyl exposure all over the place. So people who aren't even addicted, who do not have a drug problem whatsoever, are at risk of overdose. And so I'm trying to think of like non-traditional ways to get the antidote for overdose into people's hands, teach people how to test their drugs, make sure there's not fentanyl where it shouldn't be, teach people safer use, and just basically how to stay alive. Because people enabled me to stay alive and be here talking to you today.
When we were talking about, we all have a friend named JD who just lost a son to an overdose, and like you said, it's no longer just people that are shooting heroin. You've got kids overdosing because they've got marijuana that's laced.
No,
different.
That's not true.
Okay,
there's never fentanyl in marijuana. That's a myth. Kids were taking pills and they tell their parents that because they don't want to get in trouble for taking pills.
But so it's the pills that are being laced.
Pills. So it's pills used to be, back in my day, pills were safe. If you got a 5 milligram or a 10 milligram Percocet, that's what it was. Nobody was overdosing off of a 5 or 10 milligram perk. Now, today, pills are absolutely the highest risk category because they're almost always counterfeit and fentanyl. Like when I was in Mexico last month, a pharmacy offered me, like unsolicited, offered to sell me a 30 milligram oxycodone, and it was fentanyl. They were selling fentanyl to unsuspecting American tourists.
Wow.
And so kids now, they're mostly buying them on Snapchat. Sometimes fentanyl gets into the cocaine, but what happens most often is some drug seller somewhere makes a mistake. They have a bag of cocaine and they have a bag of fentanyl, and they look too similar.
Okay.
And so like what maybe happened to JD's son is he did a line of what he thought was cocaine, but was actually fentanyl.
So it's like straight from Pulp Fiction.
It's exactly what happened in Pulp Fiction, which is now why there's that story about the cartel is starting to dye their fentanyl purple and pink because they saw stories of American drug dealers making that mistake, and the Mexican cartel is intervening and is starting to dye their fentanyl pink.
So it's like the unintended Breaking Bad. It's insane.
It's insane. But we've never seen like the level of risk that we see today, where youth, especially, so youth overdose has skyrocketed, even though less adolescents than ever before in American history are actually experimenting with drugs, but way more are dying because drug experimentation is now incredibly risky because they're buying what looks like a Xanax. They're buying what looks like a Percocet off of Snapchat or from one of their schoolmates. 2 students just died in their high school in Los Angeles in the bathroom. Like, we've never seen anything like this, and kids still don't know. If you buy a 30 milligram oxy off the street and you put that into Google, you say round blue pill M30, Google says, this is a 30 milligram oxycodone. And you think, well, that's safe, and you have just ingested a totally wildly unknown quantity of fentanyl, and you may or may not die.
That's
so
terrible.
Pills, super high risk. Always test your cocaine. Sometimes fentanyl is sold as cocaine. Other times there's, for whatever reason, cross-contamination and there's a little bit of fentanyl in cocaine. There's fentanyl found all across the drug supply, less commonly ketamine, MDMA, meth, but absolutely highest risk is pills. Any pill. There were fake Adderall that had fentanyl in them. Any pill is super dangerous.